This episode is brought to you by Lumina Growth Lab. At Lumina, we help professional learning and development companies who are struggling with predictable lead flow, a sniper approach to attracting the ideal clients, or a system that qualifies leads so they can have a smoother sales process, finally have scalability, and ultimately take their business to the next level. Most of the time, our clients come to us frustrated because nothing seems to work outside of word of mouth and referral-based lead gen. But with the right strategy and support, they're able to confidently add new channels of lead generation and a packed pipeline that creates sustainable revenue and year-over-year growth for cheaper than ever before because of the use of AI technologies. If that sounds like you or someone you know, connect with me on LinkedIn and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you about unlocking your business's potential. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the Marketing Matrix, everyone. My name is Lisanne Murphy, and I am so excited today. Today, I am joined by a good new friend of mine, Mr. Jeremy Daniel. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Guys, I had the opportunity to meet Jeremy recently, and I was seriously so excited about his journey, about how he's gotten to what he's done today, and the level of passion that he has for what he does and the longevity of which he's been doing it for. He has not been sucked into the millennial trap of switching every few years. He has stuck with something and has become a true professional in his field. And so I'm really excited to introduce him and have him share his passion and his path with you guys. So let me take just a moment to introduce him formally, and then I'm going to give him the microphone and let him take it away today. So, Jeremy Daniel is the head of training for Color Code International, the company behind the Color Code personality assessment, which has been taken by millions of people worldwide. For over 20 years, he has helped clients improve communication, strengthen relationships, and unlock performance using this powerful framework. Jeremy has delivered workshops and certifications for organizations like Microsoft, Kroger, and Allstate, and is known for making psychology both practical and engaging. His passion is helping people see the differences as strengths, and so they can build cultures where teams thrive. Love it. Oh man, I'm so excited to dive into this conversation. So again, Jeremy, thanks so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Yeah, I'm excited too. Let's do it.
Okay, so for those that don't know you, give us a little bit of background in terms of the color code is one of the most foundational basic personality tests in my opinion. It's one of the foundational ones. Like when you hear about Myers-Briggs or the DISC assessment or Strengths Finders, in my opinion, the color code is up there as one that's one of the foundational ones. How did you get into this so early? What happened?
Hey, that's a great question. And I'm glad that the color code is making the list. I agree. It's becoming more and more popular all the time. We have people taking our personality assessment all the time. I fell into this very early. Yeah. So it was the late 90s, to date myself entirely. It was the late 90s that I fell into color code. And I actually saw Dr. Hartman, who's the founder of the color code. I saw him present a workshop, and I remember just being blown away at the experience. And I remember thinking, I mean, this is the day, think about the mid to late 90s, right? That's when, if you wanted to hear a big name author or something like that, if you want Stephen Covey, right? 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that was huge in the mid 90s. And if you wanted to see an event like that, your company had to host something, you had to go to a conference, or you could buy books on tape or CD, a CD set or whatever. And I felt so fortunate to be able to actually be in the room and hear Dr. Hartman, the author, the founder of the color code, speak. And I was blown away. And I thought to myself, I was young. I was 21 years old. I was really young. And I remember thinking, you could actually do this for a living. This could be something that you do. And he had a trainer certification program at the time. And that's where I had that thought was you can learn somebody's framework and teach it to other people. That sounds awesome. And so in the fall of 1998, I went through the trainer certification program. It was in its infancy, its early days. And I started teaching then. And this was at a time where like the color code book was written in the mid 80s. And Dr. Hartman like didn't write this book as a like it wasn't supposed to be a training thing, right? The book wasn't supposed to be like a business book. It was something that he developed to help his clients. He was a practicing clinical psychologist. He just wanted a way to help his patients faster. And so if you think about the road that gets you to that point to where you can practice as a psychologist, it's like, a bachelor's degree in communication for him, a master's degree in counseling, and a PhD and years of or thousands of hours of supervised therapy and that sort of thing before you can even start. And then once he started, it was like 10 years down the road, and he felt like the tools that he had been given, and you named some of the models that are out there. I actually think they all have their merits. And I never really discount what any of them bring to the table, but the color code is wired differently. And his approach was like, hey, the tools that I've been given aren't helping clients fast enough, and I need to speed that process up. And so as a clinical psychologist in practice, he was looking to maybe approach personality a little differently. And instead of taking the approach that, again, a Myers-Briggs, a DISC, a StrengthsFinders, et cetera, the Harry Potter sorting hat, like all of those assessments take, which is a behavioral approach where you look at what people do. And then based on the behavioral actions that you can observe, you put them into a personality category. That's generally how these assessments are wired across the board. Like look at them worldwide. That's how you'll see that they are wired. And he wanted to do it differently. He said, instead of looking at what people do, I really need to know their why. I need to know why they're doing what they do. And so he started to work from this perspective of motive. And that translated into the need to have a personality assessment, which he created for use with his clients, again, to speed up therapy. He was sharing his findings with his fellow colleagues he was teaching at the time at the University of California. They were saying, you've got to write a book, you've got to get this out there to the world. But it was intended to be like, hey, if you want to improve your relationships, your life, the way that you see yourself, the way that you interact with others, this framework will help you. And that was the idea. It was a counseling practice, a therapy practice. But as soon as the book was published, then people started calling and saying, could you speak at a conference? Can you come and work with my team? Can you teach us this framework so that we know how to manage people more effectively and lead and inspire people more effectively? And that's about the time that I got involved, actually. So I was like very, very lucky to be there at this intersection of like, we were coming out of the therapy world and entering the business world. And we didn't really have many tools at that point. The most advanced tool that we had, I think I shared this with you a few weeks ago, we had like overhead slide transparencies. That's what we had. We didn't even have a
No,
PowerPoint
last one.
presentation, right? Yeah. My very first presentation was in 1998. Somebody called and said, hey, could you come? We want to do the color code at my son's bar mitzvah, which was totally out of the blue. It's only happened one time ever. It's never happened again. I'm not connected to that community. Like, I don't even know how this happened. And so, I said, okay, yeah. And I'm thinking on my feet, I'm like 21 years old. And I'm like, this would be great. Like, I need to get started with this. I need to go teach my first class and get one under my belt. And so I said, okay, and I'm trying to be like a business professional, like on this call, right? And I'm like, okay, I will come under two circumstances. Number one, you have to pay me $100 because that's the biggest number that I could think of. I could imagine at that point, like, you have to pay me $100. And then the second condition was you have to have an overhead slide transparency projector because I didn't have one. I didn't know. I didn't want to go buy one. I don't think you could rent one. And I'm like, I'll bring the transparencies and the blue pen and we'll rock the bar mitzvah. So that's how I started, like way back in the day. So things are way different now than they were then, but that is how I got my beginning.
I love it. Well, and honestly, like you just said, like overhead projector, and like the hum of the projector and the sound of those sheets just like came flooding back into my mind. Like you like sent me back into high school real fast with that one. I
Awesome.
love it. I love it. And now we're in a world where with generative AI, where I'm sure you guys are working on tools that are in the moment coaching with people while they're in conflict or something like that. So wow, that's really remarkable. And I love that it was like it was created from a place of, I think, So those are like the best products, right? Are products that are created with a genuine desire to solve a problem that you're experiencing personally in your world in one way or another, right? So for
Yeah,
it
I
to like
agree.
explode into like the corporate side, like it's a fascinating journey.
Yeah, I think there's always been a lot of heart to what we do because we care about people genuinely. And I know that there are a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to your show. And, entrepreneurs are a great example of where the color code can benefit somebody because an entrepreneur has so many things going on in their life. They're trying to get a business going while they're maybe also trying to do a million other things, including, you know, not the small undertaking of maybe even like raising a family and all the nuances that are involved with that. So, we approach the color code from the angle of like you need a framework to understand what makes you tick, why you do what you do, how to navigate relationships. One of our mantras, like one of our main beliefs with the color code, is that all life is about relationships. And I'm all in on that. I can't think of anything in my life that is not impacted by relationships. And so, with that kind of in our hearts, like we go out and we help people understand, like, hey, yeah, do you want your team to function more effectively? Well, you need to figure out like we can't help you with the with all of the business side of things, but one business side of thing that we can really help you with is the people side, and people are what make your team go or not go. People are your greatest asset or they're your greatest liability, and we can help there. And it's about human connection. It's about understanding again how to communicate, how to collaborate more effectively, and how to just be like good genuine people to each other, but understanding the patterns and the frameworks so that differences don't drive you crazy. You can actually embrace differences as a superpower.
Love that so much. Um, and I totally agree. I mean, I really resonate with that. Like, relationships are the basis of everything, and not just relationships with others, but relationships with yourself, right? Like you said, like understanding like why you do things and like how you operate. Like, so important. So I have to ask.
You're so right. Yeah, that's where it starts.
I love it. So I have to ask: Are you an assessment junkie, or like
Yeah.
are you like okay? So I'm curious. What is there's I think sometimes assessments get a lot of shade in the world because they're like, "They don't know me," or "They can't tell me who I am or what I do." So I'm an assessment junkie as well. I love assessments, and I would love your perspective on, like, the role assessments have played in your life, or what do you feel like is their function in a life? Because yeah, I mean, you and we gotta go convert people, man. Like, I love
We
assessments.
do. We do. And I do take them all. Like I'm an ENTJ in the Myers-Briggs. I'm a C of the disc. I'm a golden retriever. I'm an Ariel on the Disney Princess quiz. I'm a Gryffindor. I'm super fascinated by these things and just how people put them together. But I think the role that they play, to answer your question, I think the role that they play is providing clarity into relationships. I think that's the biggest role that they can play. And that's where I think the color code really shines because, again, it's not a behavioral assessment. Most people go there because behavior is observable and you can document it and you can record patterns. And it's just in terms of like the way to classify something from a scientific perspective, like it's observable. It makes it really easy. And so you can start to identify patterns. People have been doing that for hundreds of years with personality assessments. The reason I like the color code is because it is much deeper than your behavior. It's all about your why. It's all about what we call your driving core motive, why you do what you do. There are a lot of elements that make up personality. Behavior is one huge element that makes up personality. But what drives the behavior? What causes you to think and feel and act the way that you do? There's something deeper. And that's what we call your driving core motive. And so it's so important to understand that because it's a critical piece of your identity. And you were right. Like what you said just a few minutes ago, that understanding yourself, like the relationship that you have with yourself is the most important relationship. 100% absolutely true because you're filtering everything through that. And so if you don't understand yourself, if you're not self-aware, it's really hard to make progress in other ways. And then you start to look at other people and say, "Oh, here are the differences that exist between you and I. And at that point, we have two choices that we can make. And it all like I love the word cleave. I'm kind of a word. So in addition to being an assessment junkie, I'm also a little bit of a word nerd, right? And so I love the word cleave because it's a contronym. It's a word that has two definitions and they're opposite of each other. And so cleave can be like a butcher with a cleaver, right? Just absolutely like driving separation, cutting something in half. And differences can cause us to respond that way. If somebody thinks about the world differently than we do, and you see this all the time, social media, we are becoming so bad as a culture at living in, with differences. We are very intolerant. You know, cancel culture is alive and well. We're very disrespectful of people who see the world differently than we do. And that's got to stop. That has absolutely got to stop. It's got to change. We need to be able to have respectful dialogue with one another. But differences really are irritating, or they can be irritating if we allow them to kind of cleave in that direction. The other definition of cleave, though, is, of course, to adhere to come together. And that's where I say that your differences really can become your superpower. And that's the message that we share with the teams and the cultures that we're working with is like, yes, people are different. And that's great. You know, instead of like getting hung up on personality conflicts and clash and all of those kinds of things, let's look at each other through different eyes. If we can see each other through new eyes, there are so many discoveries that we can make. So that's the value of personality assessments, I believe, in providing that very clean framework for understanding ourselves and then ourselves in relation to how we connect with other people, how we communicate, how we build culture, all of those things start with a basic understanding of human beings. And that's the role I think that assessments can play.
So good. Yeah, and I love that. I really appreciate you bringing in some etymology with cleave in there. So true. Okay, so I want to talk about core motive for a moment, okay? So, here's my question with core motive. Based on the research that you guys have done or your experience, whatever you want to draw on, a question that I've been thinking about a lot recently and I would love your perspective is this. Is your core motive nature? Like you're born with it? Like you're just born with like a core drive, like the values that you espouse? Nurture? Is it a product of the society that you're born into, the family that you're born into? Or is it choice? Like I think we all get to a point in our lives where we choose like how if we're like if we question why we're doing something and we're like I want to do it differently, right? Like we choose a core motive, right? So I would love your perspective on those three: nature, nurture, and choice when it comes to core motive and like how that works.
Can I pay you a quick compliment before I answer your question?
Yeah, sure.
I think that's the best way anybody's ever framed that question to me. Like, so well done, because there are very specific nuances to all of those things. To answer your question succinctly, I would say that driving core motive, we believe, is nature. I'm going to be real clear on that. I'm not gonna like, give you a mixed answer on that. Oh, it's a little bit of this, it's a little bit of that. I think it would be easy to say that. We 100% absolutely believe, and this is going to be something that people are like, wait, that sounds weird, but this is our core underlying theory behind the color code. We 100% believe that your driving core motive is nature, that it's actually innately present at birth. We also believe that it never changes over the course of your lifetime. Now, let me explain. Let's get into the nurture and the choice element of that as well. So again, the driving core motive, we believe, is constant. However, we also believe that we change as human beings, but we change on a behavioral level. We change on a values adoption level. We change in so many different ways that might cause people to see your core motive a little differently, but it doesn't really change it. In the color code, I'll give you an example. I think you took the color code, right?
I
Were you a
did.
red?
Yeah, I was a red. Yeah.
Okay, okay. All right, great. So if you're a red, like reds want to get from point A to point B in the quickest, most efficient way possible, period. That's the definition that we use for power for reds. It's not that they're power hungry. It's not that they want to control everything. These are things that people say to me, like when we're debriefing this in a workshop. But for reds, what we're really talking about is getting from point A to point B in the quickest and fastest way possible. That doesn't change over the course of your life. And we also do talk about common behavioral traits that you would experience with a red, strengths, limitations, emotional needs and wants, how to work with reds effectively, like what are the do's and don'ts. We get into all of those things as we're working with clients and kind of like building out this framework with them. And it is very possible that you are a red who has learned blue strengths or white strengths or yellow strengths or even limitations in the other colors. So our behaviors will change as our parents influence us, as our friends influence us, as we get into the workforce. The workplace, like corporate America, that's a red environment. It's all about profit. It's all about getting things done, making things happen. You've got to move the needle. You have to learn red to do well in that environment. Like that's just the language of business. Whereas you might say, well, the language of family might look like more blue or something along those lines, right? So in a family situation, a red might learn to be more nurturing. My wife is a red, by the way. And I do remember like when our first child was born, she was probably 6 months old, and my wife she was feeling bad. And I still remember this because it was a very real thing for her. She was feeling bad because she didn't feel all of the same level of emotions and nurturing instincts that one of her siblings did, who is wired a little differently than her. And so when we compare ourselves, but she was so good in other ways as a red parent. And so she's learned those things over time, but that doesn't mean that she's not a red anymore, right? So you learn things as you have children, you learn things as you go to work, you learn things as you become social, but it doesn't change the core color. It helps you understand how to navigate the environment that you're in, but it doesn't ultimately change your nature. Now, choice, that's the other side of this too. We also don't believe that you're stuck, right? Like color code should never put you into a box. Color code opens the box and should let you out of the box, right? Like nobody should pigeonhole anybody based on their color code results. It's not fair to say, well, you can't trust a red, blue, white, or yellow to do that job because, that's just they're not wired for that. Because again, like when we choose to grow, we call that the charactering process, by the way. There are actually two assessments. There's the color code, which really measures that nature, that driving core motive, and then there's the character code, which measures the growth that you've experienced over the course of your life. And sometimes people don't know that we have two separate assessments, and so it's not for somebody to say, well, I used to be a yellow, but now I'm a blue. And you have to unpack that to understand what they mean. But once you do and you explain like, oh, we would call that the charactering process, not necessarily the fact that you're changing your color, it makes sense to people, but you kind of have to understand the framework.
I love that. Well, and first of all, thank you for the compliment. That means a lot. I think about these things often, and so like when you were talking about core motive, I was like, oh my gosh, like I have to ask Jeremy this question because it's something that I've thought thought a lot about in terms of like I think as we grow up and as we individuate, especially from our families of origin, there is this process of choosing who you want to be, how you want to present in the world, what values you espouse. And I've also been thinking about it in terms of how persuasive as well as what's the word I want to use? Persuasive as well as like how can't find the right word, and maybe you can for me since you're a word nerd, but how algorithms pigeonhole us into certain frames of thoughts or value streams, right?
Sure.
And I've just been thinking so much about like how do we intentionally how do we not just be authentic to our true selves, but how do we choose how we want to be in the world without just being smashed into patterns and parties because of society or social media or whatever is going on in our environment. It's something I think about almost every day. So anyway, I really appreciate your breakdown on that in terms of like we have a core of like who we are at the core, but yes, there's also aspects of nurture and charactering, like you mentioned, that go along with that. So
100%. And to give you like maybe a practical application of where that can be very useful as well, it could be that you remember. So I'll give you a personal example. As a yellow, which is what I am, yellows are motivated by fun, which means living in the moment, enjoying the process of things even more than the results. I remember as a young working professional, really working a lot because I was motivated to figure this out, to master the craft, to start working with clients and to do well. And I would work very long hours and I was kind of in red mode, if you will, just by virtue of the way that I was taking on my responsibilities. At some point, I realized that my happiness was taking a hit. And my wife was the one that pointed it out. She was, I was grumpy. I was not myself. And we do an exercise sometimes when we get into it's a little bit more of the character code. But I absolutely believe that the first step to growth in general, in terms of personal and professional development, I believe the first step to growth is that number one, you have to value you. You have to value yourself. And there's a little exercise that we do sometimes with clients, and it's super simple. Anybody can do this. Your listeners could do this, right? You just make a list of 10 things that you love to do. You love to do them for the sake of doing them. They're not tied to a result. And you'll hear, Red say things like, I love landing the big client or whatever. And I get it. Like that's super exciting if you're a Red. But that's a result. Like, what do you love to do just for the sake of doing? Like, do you love to sing? Do you love to play tennis or whatever it is that you love to do? And you make a list of 10 things. Yellows can give you 50 things off the top of their head that they love to do just for the sake of doing. Again, it doesn't have to lead anywhere, just fun. Blues start to break a sweat like by the time they've like written 3 out because they're feeling guilty. But in any case, if you're able to make that list and prioritize it in order of the thing that you love to do the most, that's number 1, all the way to number 10, which is like, you still love to do it, but it's not as important as number 1 on your list. You can kind of look at those priorities, the things that you love, and you can ask yourself the question, when was the last time that I did these things? And it can be very, very telling. It certainly was for me when I did this. I was probably 25, 26 years old. I made this list of things and I looked at it and I went, oh my gosh, like, Jeremy, you're lost. Like you're not doing these things that ground you with valuing who you are. And so even though the things that I was doing in red mode, let's say, were productive, they were helpful, they were advancing my career, they were providing for my family, they were doing all of those wonderful things. At the end of the day, you still have to remain connected to your driving core motive. So if you see somebody who's struggling, red, blue, white, or yellow, and they appear to have everything together and they're doing really well, but they're unhappy, the first question that I go to is, but are you connected with that driving core motive? Because you will get pulled into these different modalities based on the demands of the environment or what have you. At the end of the day, you still have to remember that you've got to nurture that driving core motive. And if you feel connected there, your performance in all other areas is going to be increased.
Mm, I love that. I love that. Yeah. So powerful. I think one of the things that even as a Red, what I've realized is like, it's very easy for me to get lost in, I'll frame it in like how you just said it, like following another guru's framework so that I can get from point A to point B as fast as possible. But what often happens with that is that there are pieces of me that are lost because I'm not that guru, right? And like their process worked for them. And so I lose a piece of myself in that process, get kind of miserable, and then have to like recalibrate and realize like there's a lot of things that I picked up that weren't truly me or authentic or connected to what really drives me and like how I prefer to get from point A to point B, if you will. And so I love that you kind of laid out that exercise of just like how simple it is, right? There was a professor that I had in my master's program who he studied life callings, and it was his name was Professor Jeff Thompson. His whole work was, why do people do things that they're passionate about, especially when it's not tied to monetary gains? So he studied zoologists, was like the demographic that he studied, because zoologists are paid a meager sum, but all of them are like, I would die for any of my animals and I would do this no matter what, even if it was free, and they're like scooping elephant-sized dung, and like they're just like, this is my calling. So
Sounds
anyway,
like my nightmare. They're calling my nightmare. Yeah.
right. But that's overall we're all different, right? He has assessment that like helps you find where your calling is, and one of the activities is how did you like to play as a child? Because he was like when you're a kid and you don't have the pressures of society or family or a fan like to make money, right? Like you play how you want to play, and so one of the very first activities he has you do is analyze how did you play as a child and how can that translate into your adulting activities? And so it's really similar to like what you just said in terms of like the list of
Yeah.
10 you love to do just for the sake of loving it.
100%. Yeah, I think that's a great activity. Yeah, I think that would be a great way to look at it. Like, what really ignites you? And I think, coming back to your comment on even like following another guru's framework, we all do it. And those are super helpful. And we all provide frameworks for people to follow as well. And that's all really, really helpful. But yes, like, we don't want to lose you. We don't want to lose Lisanne in that framework because your genius, unique intelligence is really what's going to make things work for you. Those guidelines are there. They're very, very helpful. I think people are falling victim to this a little bit in the age of AI that we've entered into as well, like relying a little too much on others to provide answers for you, as opposed to like really digging in and discovering things for yourself. There's a magic to that I don't think you can ever replace.
I love that so much. Oh man. Well, Jeremy, seriously, I bet we could like talk about so many of these things for like many, many, many hours.
Probably. We should
And
try it sometime.
yeah, we should try it. I say it's at your house in Hawaii though, so I'm coming to you.
All right.
But
We'll go out and surf. We'll do it over a surf. How about that?
oh, that would be amazing in between waves, right? It has been a joy having you on the Marketing Matrix today and to feel your passion and depth of experience and knowledge and um, conviction of the power of. I love how you keep bringing it back to the fact that it's not that this is an assessment not just based on behavior. I actually had never considered that with assessments before, like what's their origin, if it's about, like essentially your core personality DNA, or is it your behavior? Because I mean, it's a known fact that there's so much that happens in our psyche before we actually take an action, from our desires, our beliefs, our thought patterns, right? That eventually leads to behavior. And so highlighting that the assessment works back more on like the DNA level of who you are is just really cool. And I really appreciate you bringing that to the show today and also giving us some practical ways to think about it ourselves. So again, thank you so much for coming on the Marketing Matrix.
Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, okay, if people want to find the color code themselves, take an assessment, or follow you, or get in touch with you, or see if you can come, your team can come to a training for them, how do people find you?
I'll give you a couple ways. If you want to reach me directly, easiest way is email. It's just jeremy@colorcodetraining.com. Uh, LinkedIn works well as well. It's Jeremy J. Daniel. That's where I'm at. That's where I live on LinkedIn, Jeremy J. Daniel. I'm not super, super active, but you can reach me there. And then if anybody is interested in just taking the color code assessment, they can go to colorcodetraining.com/marketing matrix. And we'll have a link there that they can use to take the assessment and see if they're red, blue, white, or yellow.
Awesome. Guys, well, thank you so much. And thanks for creating a personalized link for our listeners. So, guys, I hope that you check that out. And I really appreciate you bringing the yellow fun onto the podcast and hanging out with a red here today. It really has just been a really really good time to get to know you better and explore the color code.
Thanks for having me. I like reds. They're cool. So it was fun.